Welcome back to the deep dive. We sift through the sources so you don't have to, bringing you the insights that, well, really matter. Today, we're tackling a big one. A huge one, really. Why do we fall in love? It feels so incredibly personal, almost, magical sometimes. But what if there's more to it? What if science has actually found some patterns underneath it all?
It's fascinating, isn't it, how you can pull together findings from, well, all over the place, psychology, biology, neuroscience, sociology,
Hmm.
and build this really holistic picture.
Uh-huh.
Our goal today is basically to cut through the myths,
Hmm.
get straight to the evidence-based patterns, give you a shortcut to being really informed on something that, let's face it, touches all of us.
Yeah, absolutely. And wading through all the research for this deep dive, one thing really jumped out, didn't it? It seems like despite how unique love feels to us, people tend to fall in love for two kind of fundamental reasons. Can you lay those out for us?
Sure. So our deep dive basically boils it down to two main categories. First, there's what we're calling biological attraction. It's deeply connected to brain chemistry, genetics, the physical stuff that initially draws you in.
Okay, biological. Got it.
And second, there's emotional attraction. This is more about attachment, psychological compatibility, that deeper connection you build over time.
Right, so a mix of like hidden forces and feelings we actually recognize. Okay, let's get into this. Because the biological side of it, what the sources show, it's kind of mind-bending, honestly. It turns out falling in love isn't just, a vague feeling. It's deeply biological, almost involuntary.
Oh, absolutely. When you really look at it, romantic love isn't just a feeling. It's like
Uh,
a finely tuned neurological event. Our brains aren't just passengers here. They're actively rewiring, firing up circuits tied to reward, desire, motivation. It's less a passive feeling and more like a profound biological drive. It often starts with this chemical cocktail, you could say.
a chemical cocktail. I like that. So what's in it? The sources mention biological anthropologist Helen Fisher's work quite a bit. How does her research help us understand the neurochemistry of falling in love? Or enamoramiento, as she calls it.
Helen Fisher's work is really key here. She identified three distinct brain systems, each with its own chemical signature, that manage love. First, there's sexual desire, mostly driven by testosterone and estrogens. Pretty straightforward. Then you have romantic attraction. This is where dopamine, norepinephrine, and serotonin really come into play, that intense early phase. And finally, attachment, the long-term bonding part, linked to oxytocin and vasopressin. And these systems interact, they're not totally separate.
Wow, okay, so our brains are really busy. And dopamine, that one comes up a lot, the pleasure chemical, right?
Right.
Our sources suggest it plays this massive role. Can you talk a bit more about dopamine? Why does it make early love feel so intense, almost addictive?
Yeah, the research by Iran and others is super insightful here. When you're falling for someone, your brain pumps out huge amounts of dopamine. It floods those reward circuits, giving you intense feelings of pleasure, euphoria, focus. You're just completely motivated towards that person. And it's not really an exaggeration to compare it to how addictive substances work. It activates similar reward pathways as, say, cocaine. That comparison helps explain why early love feels so incredibly powerful, almost obsessive.
So it's not just poetry when people talk about being addicted to love. There's a real brain basis for it. And that obsessive part, constantly thinking about them, is that chemical too?
It seems so. Research, like Marizidis' work back in '99, suggests that those obsessive thoughts might be linked to low levels of serotonin, actually. Especially in those initial stages, it's almost like the brain deliberately keeps them front and center, reinforcing that focus.
It's just wild how much is going on beneath the surface chemically. But okay, so the chemicals are firing, but it's not just chemistry, right? Our evolutionary programming must kick in too, guiding who we're drawn to.
Exactly. Evolutionarily speaking, love is basically nature's way of encouraging reproduction and ideally co-parenting. So physical attraction isn't random. It's like an unconscious screening process. Our bodies are doing these quick, silent calculations, pushing us towards partners whose looks signal, well, biological advantages.
Biological billboards. What kinds of signals are we talking about? Things we actually notice.
Precisely. Think about things like facial symmetry, or a certain waist-to-hip ratio in women, or waist-to-chest ratio in men. Research, like Rhodes' work, shows these aren't just cultural whims. They're often seen as attractive across cultures because they signal good health, fertility, basically good genes. It's a subconscious nudge towards genetic fitness.
Okay, so that's the visual stuff. But are there like hidden signals too, things we're not consciously aware of?
Oh, definitely. And this next one is pretty amazing. Our sense of smell plays a huge subconscious role. It's guided by something called the major histocompatibility complex, or MHC.
Whoa, MHC, that sounds complicated. It's about smell.
It is, and it's fascinating. The MHC system influences our individual body odor. And studies, like the famous one by Winnecamp, show something really cool. We tend to be more attracted subconsciously to people whose MHC profile is different from our own.
Different. Why different?
Well, the evolutionary logic seems to be about offspring. A partner with a different MHC profile means potential children get a more diverse set of immune genes. This makes them more resilient, better equipped to fight off a wider range of diseases. It's nature's way of boosting the next generation's immune system, basically through smell.
Okay, hold on. So my deep primal attraction could literally be influenced by how someone smells on a level I don't even notice. Makes you rethink love at first sight, doesn't it? Maybe it was love at first sniff. It just highlights how much of that initial pull is driven by these deep, unconscious biological things pushing for, well, survival of the species.
It's a fundamental biological push, yeah, driving us to connect.
Okay, so biology gets the ball rolling, powerful, often unconscious forces pulling us in. But once that initial spark happens, how do we get from just attraction to real lasting connection? That's where emotional attraction comes in, right? The psychological stuff, the social factors.
Exactly. This is where we move from the more instinctive chemical stuff to the relational, the deeply human side of love. Our emotional world, how we connect and relate, becomes really central.
And attachment theory seems crucial here. John Bowlby's work and then Hazan and Shaver building on it, they showed how our early life experiences kind of set the stage for adult relationships. Can you give us a quick refresher on those attachment styles?
Sure. Bowlby, and later Hazan and Shaver, showed we tend to develop these patterns. You might be secure, feeling comfortable with intimacy and trust, or maybe more anxious, where you crave closeness but worry a lot about abandonment, needing reassurance, or perhaps avoidant, where you value independence and might feel uncomfortable with too much closeness, keeping partners at arm's length. And these styles directly shape how we navigate romance.
So it's not just finding someone hot, it's finding someone whose way of connecting fits with yours.
Pretty much. Someone with a secure style often finds relationships more stable, more satisfying. They can give and take intimacy comfortably. Anxious or avoidant styles, though, can create challenges. You might see cycles of clinginess and withdrawal, struggles with trust. Deep, lasting love often seems to involve finding someone whose style complements yours, or where both partners feel secure enough to navigate differences. It's about feeling safe, fundamentally.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So beyond how we attach, what about just psychological compatibility? Is that just liking the same movies?
No, it goes way deeper than sharing a Netflix account.
Yeah.
Compatibility is more about alignment on the big stuff. Core values, life goals, emotional intelligence, and really importantly, communication styles. How do you handle conflict? How do you express needs? There was that longitudinal study from the University of Chicago, Nee and colleagues, I think. They found couples with high levels of shared values and, crucially, mutual emotional support were way more likely to stick together long term. It's how you are together, not just what you do.
Right, how you navigate life's inevitable bumps. So things like empathy, managing your own emotions, those must be huge.
Absolutely critical. Being able to genuinely understand your partner's feelings and respond appropriately, that builds incredible closeness. Think about a disagreement. Can one partner see past the anger to the hurt underneath? Can they respond calmly instead of getting defensive? That kind of emotional skill, that attunement, builds deep trust and intimacy over time.
And then there's the world around us, our culture, our social circles. How does that play into emotional attraction?
Massively. The broader social context shapes everything who we even meet, what we expect from love, what we consider normal or desirable in a partner. Cultural norms, our friends, our family, our workplaces, they all influence the pool of potential partners and our expectations. Like research by Dion showed that in more collectivist cultures, love might be more tied to family agreement and social stability, whereas in more individualistic cultures, like many in the West, there's often more emphasis on intense personal passion and emotional fulfillment.
Wow. It really makes you think how much of what feels like a purely personal choice is actually shaped by these invisible cultural scripts we live by.
It does raise that question, doesn't it?
Yeah.
How much is personal preference and how much is just the blueprint we've been given?
Okay, so let's pull this all together. We have these two big reasons, biological and emotional. How do they actually work together to create, well, love? It sounds like they're not separate boxes, but more intertwined.
Exactly. It's not an either situation. Falling in love is this dynamic dance between the biological and the emotional. They interact, they influence each other. Sometimes one takes the lead, sometimes the other.
So the biological side, that's often the initial spark, right? The magnet, the physical cues, the smell, the chemicals. generating that immediate, wow, feeling, that desire.
Precisely. It's often the hook. It pulls you in, creates that initial intensity and focus, but then emotional attraction is like the foundation. It's what sustains the connection. It builds the bond through shared experiences, trust, secure attachment, feeling understood,
Yeah.
that psychological compatibility we talked about. This is what allows love to mature from that fiery, maybe unstable beginning into something deeper, more lasting. One often sparks the other, or they grow side by side.
What happens if you have one without the other? Like intense physical chemistry, but no real emotional connection.
Well, the sources suggest that's usually not built to last. The spark might be strong initially, but without that deeper foundation, shared values, empathy, security, it tends to fizzle out or just stay superficial.
Hmm.
On the flip side, you could have a really deep emotional connection, like a best friendship, but maybe without much physical attraction or passion. That's still a profound bond, of course, but it might lack that element of sexual satisfaction that's important for many romantic relationships.
So getting the interaction right is key. Understanding both the gut level instinctual stuff and the deeper human connection stuff.
Exactly. It's recognizing that love is both this powerful force of nature operating within us and also something we actively build through connection and relating to another person.
Okay, so let's recap this deep dive for everyone listening. We basically found that people fall in love for two fundamental reasons. First, biological attraction. Think of it as the initial magnet guided by evolution, our genes, our brain chemistry. And second, emotional attraction. This is the foundation for lasting love, built on things like attachment style, empathy, shared values, and good communication.
And understanding these two dimensions, it doesn't take away the magic.
Yeah.
If anything, it enriches it. It can help us build healthier relationships, be more conscious about what's drawing us in, what's keeping us connected. It's about seeing love as this profound mystery, yes, but also as something we can actually understand and maybe even get better at.
And wrapping up, this whole exploration leaves us with some really interesting things to chew on, some future challenges maybe. Like there's a potential pitfall in reducing love only to biology, right? Just dopamine and MHC genes. We have to balance that amazing science with the actual lived, subjective human experience of love, that feeling that's so hard to put into words.
Absolutely. And we need to remember, as the sources often point out, a lot of this research has limitations. It's heavily based on heterosexual couples, often in Western cultures.
Yeah.
We really need more diverse studies, different cultures, different orientations, to get the full picture of human love. What attracts people, how they bond. It isn't always the same everywhere.
And then there's technology,
Yeah.
dating apps, maybe even AI matchmaking down the line.
Yeah.
It's changing how we meet, how we connect. How does that impact these fundamental biological and emotional processes? Are algorithms accidentally prioritizing one over the other? That's a huge question.
And it brings up ethics, too. If science gets really good at predicting compatibility, genetically or emotionally, how much should we use that? To what extent should technology guide or even make these incredibly personal choices for us? Where's the line between helpful insight and, well, something else? It really underscores that tension between understanding love scientifically and preserving the autonomy, and maybe the serendipity of finding connection.
Yeah, definitely a lot to mull over. Love. It just keeps being one of the most fascinating things to explore, doesn't it? Thank you so much for joining us on the deep dive today. We hope this conversation gave you some fresh perspectives on why we fall in love.